Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host of your show, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. I'm so excited for today's guest. You know, most of the guests on the show, I would say over 90% are referrals from past guests, and today's guest came to me via Dr. Lori Marbas, who's a wonderful plant-based doctor. She has a whole company that does telehealth. And she said, you must have Jamie on your show. She not only lost 250 pounds, but she has quite a story about her history with weight and struggling with food addiction. And I really resonate with everything she has to say. Please welcome Jamie Morgan Reno to the show. It's so nice to meet you.
Thank you. So nice to meet you. Thank you again for having me.
Of course, well, you come highly referred and you're wearing like one of my favorite colors. I that shade of blue, man, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So looking at you now, you're beautiful, you're slender. I think people might have a hard time believing that you weighed 250 pounds more than you do now. If they're on my mailing list, we sent a photo, but not everybody watches the show is subscribed to my mailing list. So do you think you can prove it?
I can. Yes, I have a photo, and I'll make sure I still talk here while I hold up the photo. So tell me if that's in screen for you guys. That was not actually near my highest, but that was one of the only photos I wanted taken of me at my, near my highest. At my highest, I could not find scales to weigh me. Not that I was, looking that closely, but this was one that was taken actually the very, very end of that deep addiction cycle. And this was probably close to my highest. And again, I can kind of get it close to the camera for you so you can see there. That's it was well over 400 at that point. I'm about 5'8", and I have, a larger frame, but 400 plus pounds. And I remember not being able to walk, not being able to really move much. It was very painful existence then.
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations on the incredible success. I'm sure you must feel very proud of the success you've achieved because not everybody can do what you did.
Thank you. Thank you.
So tell me a story. In other words, you didn't wake up 400 pounds. When did this start?
I realized after I kind of talked to my family as an adult about my infancy, because I noticed that I always had a very slow metabolism. I actually had a session with Dr. Lyle a few years ago, and he told me, he said, you're one of those rare people that will survive any famine. Congratulations. And I just thought it was so funny to hear him, describe it that way. But, my metabolism, was sort of just prone to fat storage. And when I asked my family, why was I sort of always, was I always this way? And they're like, no. When you were an infant, you were normal. You were normal weight. And then I looked at pictures. I was never a normal weight, Chef AJ. I was very chunky, very, very heavy all of my life. And I remember my mother telling the story about how my pediatrician told her to start wearing a jumpsuit because I wanted to nurse so much that it was like a compulsive thing for me, even as I was nursing. And he said, if she's eating too much, you've got to kind of wear a jumpsuit. So I knew from when I heard that story as an adult, I'm like, okay, there was something going on. Not only was I in a very, very stressful home environment, unfortunately, there was a lot of family strife growing up, divorce and some unexpected losses in the family at an early age. And that created a lot of stress. But then, I had this sort of slow metabolism plus this compulsive drive to soothe with food. And I think this sort of perfect storm came together for me where I was in an environment and a family and social environment that encouraged eating and encouraged food consumption and food celebration. So it really that put the bow on top of this whole sort of package that I'd been building. And that's what led to obesity as a child, morbid obesity as a child. Doctors telling me and my mom, just have her eat half of that, that food or that meal, have her push away from the table when she's full, like looking at me like, don't you get, you should be able to do this. What's wrong with you? And I remember feeling this deep sense of shame as a child, like, why, I must be broken. I must be broken. They're telling me to do something and looking at me like I should be able to do it. To eat half that sandwich, to to say no to that second slice of cake, to not eat more than the other kids at a birthday party. And just, it felt like it was going against my nature. Indeed it was.
Were other people in your family overweight?
Yes. I am my mother was a severe processed food addict. And unfortunately, that addiction took her at an early age. She was only 60 when she passed away. And I have folks on both sides of my family that were obese and are obese. And unfortunately, on both sides of my family, we have big boned people and people that had morbid obesity, even back around the turn of the century, 1900s. I was shown pictures. So it is just in my genes.
Yeah, congratulations. Well, the good news is, Jamie, if there ever is another famine, you'll survive.
That's right. That's right.
At what age is your first recollection that you were overweight?
Oh, very young. Families, family comments at family functions and birthday parties. You should not eat that much. Stop eating. Take that food away from her. Stuff like that. It was pretty young. It was pretty young.
Yeah. Were other kids your age at that time? Because you don't have to tell me how old you are, and I don't know, but like, were you the only one? Because for me, I wasn't as heavy as you, but still, when you're the heaviest one in your class, people notice.
Yeah. So I was I have one sibling, an older brother. He was always a normal weight as a child and a young adult. He never struggled. Cousins and others were always normal weight. So I was in the family, and the children in the family, I was the heaviest. And in my class, I grew up. I'm in my 40s, and I grew up in the 70s and 80s and 90s, and all the way through school. I was always of the class, the one or two people that had the weight issue.
Right. Had you tried any diets while you were growing up?
Yeah. My mother had struggled all of her life. My mother actually went to Duke. So she went to Duke and she might have been on, that the diet that we talk about as some of the research that would have probably been in the 70s, maybe early 80s when she did that. So she was part of that cohort in that research study. And when she got out of that environment, was not able to maintain. But I had that sort of inclination to sort of observe that in her, and it was again is part of the social familial structure. I'm Italian, so we just that food was love, food was celebration, it was encouraged, and it was part of the culture in the family for sure. Yeah. So between my mother and I, and then some cousins on my dad's side definitely have some struggle with that.
Wow. How old were you when you attempted your first diet, and what was that diet?
I was probably, after my mother had gone through the Duke program, she had found Weight Watchers. I was probably in my preteens. And we went to Weight Watchers together. I remember, fighting tooth and nail to not have to do the Weight Watchers route, because I was a kid and so embarrassed. I just thought, here I am at this meeting, a bunch of adults, and I don't know what I'm doing here. I know what I'm doing here, but I don't know how to be here. And it was so just a struggle for me, and it was a lot of shame. Right, there was this intense feeling of there's something wrong with me, and now I have to go to these extreme lengths. I'm not like other kids, and now I'm really not like other kids. And that was hard, right? But my mom had this, she understood she didn't understand she had an addiction. She understood that she had a problem with food, and she was so, I think, committed to making sure that her daughter didn't have that same issue. So she wanted to kind of get ahead of it. So yes, the diets and certainly she even put me on the Duke program. She had the Duke program. I remember it was a yellow notebook, and she pulled out that yellow notebook, and that program, she had me sort of trying to follow it, and it was like drudgery for me. And I remember thinking that this is, this doesn't. I know that I need to do something, but I don't know that this is it.
Yeah. While you were doing it to the degree that you were able to do it, did you see any results?
As a child, I don't remember seeing many results. I just remember progressively my sizes going up. And the only reason I remember that is every year when you shop for school clothes, it was like we had to shop in a different size range and then jump from kids to petites and petites to, women's sizes and then women's to plus. It's
I'm,
just,
I'm, I'm about 20 years or so older than you. And I remember the same thing every year being too fat for the last year's clothes. And I'll never forget when this salesperson said to me, because I was already like, I was under the age of 11 and I had to go into, basically adult sizes. And the lady said to my mom, if she gets any fatter, she'll have to shop at Lane Giants. She meant Lane Bryant's, but it was like a,
yeah, yeah,
and
horrible. Yeah.
that's incredible. Wow. In addition to having the excess weight, did you have any health complications that you knew of from having excess
That,
weight?
it's so interesting. As a child, no. And I really, the way that I ate and knowing that processed foods were coming in more into the market at that time in the 70s, late 70s, 80s, 90s, the way that I ate, I'm shocked as a child. I didn't have type 2 diabetes, but I actually did. I was in, I had very high blood sugar. I was pre-diabetic in my early 30s and I had high blood pressure, joint issues, sleep apnea, and just general sleep issues, severe depression and anxiety. I sort of vacillated between the two, and a whole host of just general, malaise, right? I didn't have energy. I didn't have focus. It was very hard for me to sort of, pay attention to certain tasks at work. I mean, it wasn't just the physical symptoms or the medical symptoms, but it was a lot of the mental and emotional symptoms as well.
Right. What do you think the hardest part for you was as a child being overweight?
The hardest part was the judgment and ridicule by, and it's not just other kids. It was because there were lots of kids that accepted and loved me. There were, but it was the judgment and ridicule just from society in general. The family comments, the comments from other kids who didn't know me, the assumptions that people would make, the way the doctors, would talk to me or talk about me. And even, certainly in her own understanding of what I was dealing with, but in her own pain and trying to fix it. My mother's frustration, that came across as cruelty sometimes. And, it wasn't her intent, but it was a very real, kind of battle all the time where I knew that I shouldn't be eating those things or shouldn't be eating second or third portions of things. And it was very hard to moderate, very hard to stop.
Yeah, we're going to get into moderation because I think that's something we can definitely agree on. Do you think, more people are overweight and obese now than when you and I were children? And do you think it's gotten any better, the understanding at least of what causes it with healthcare practitioners?
Gosh, I think it has gotten a little bit better. And I don't think it's because it's what's taught in medical schools, most medical schools. I think it's because these physicians are going out and they're seeking this information on their own. They're finding the paths to this information and they're incorporating it into their practices. They're bringing it back to their departments. They're studying it, in their sample sizes of patients. I think that's where it's happening. And I think people like you and the thought leadership that you provide and other physicians that you have on the show that they provide, that's starting to turn the tide.
Yeah. I always wonder when people lose any amount of weight and keep it off, like what was the pivotal moment? Like for me, I had tried and failed many times, but it wasn't until I broke my knee and I was in a wheelchair and I said, that is it. Because I couldn't even, go to the bathroom by myself. And that was humiliating. Was there what's it called? A rock bottom moment for you where you just said enough?
There was. I was in my early to mid 30s, maybe 33, 34, somewhere there. I had suddenly lost my mom in 2006, 2004. So this was about 2008. And I had gone through some deep, deep, dark depression phases. And I had, trouble with, that was during the downturn of the economy in 2008. So I lost a job. And I knew that part of the reason I lost that job was because I couldn't perform physically on the job the way that I needed to. I had really, been talked to by doctors about the sleep apnea, about my my numbers and my blood sugar, about my blood pressure. I was on medication by then. They didn't use the word diabetic, but now I understand that I was diabetic, just non-insulin dependent at the time. And I knew where I was headed. And I woke up one morning, and I wish I could tell you why that morning. I heard this voice, this still small voice in my soul, and it said, "You will not live till 40. You need to do something. It cannot be a quick fix or a shortcut. And you've got to learn how to take care of yourself, or you're not going to live to 40." And I didn't know then that, that still small voice was, it's something told me, just, listen to it, listen to it. So that's when I really began the process to understand how to gain my health back, and I thought it was about weight loss. Oh gosh, I thought it was all about weight loss. It's just, that's only part of it.
Yeah, so you've got this voice that said, "This is it. We're going to do this, Jamie." What was the next step at that time?
The next step for me was I started, I went down the road of, I looked at surgery, even though that still small voice said no shortcuts. At the time I thought, well, I'm desperate, right? There's a difference for me. There's a difference between that still small voice here in my heart, or in my soul, and the sort of issues and fear, and the fear-based voice that runs in my head. And that voice was like, get surgery, go ahead and, get this taken care of. So it gives you a jump start, and then you can, find all the other ways to sustain health. I looked into it, and doors were just closing left and right financially for me. So it really led me to a path where I realized that I had a fork in the road, and I had to either, really listen to that voice. And I found a dietitian, and I found work with her, and I found a community at my local fitness center and recreational complex. And this community was amazing and so supportive and loving of me at 400 plus pounds, as they were of me at 165 pounds.
Wow. When you say you maybe were going to consider gastric bypass or some other surgery, how far did you actually look into it? Did you actually have an appointment, or did it just cross your mind?
I did some research. I did not have an appointment, because once I did the research, I realized to me, there was something off about the fact that they were going to change all of my physiology, and they weren't going to do any support leading up to it, other than a few required meetings. And the support leading up to it also required me to have these shakes and soups, and to try to get the weight off. And then they said, and after the surgery, this is how you need to eat. It just didn't feel right to me, didn't feel natural to me. And it also didn't address the mindset. And I knew my mindset needed a total overhaul. And my fear was, I know I could lose the weight. I've always been really goal oriented and very disciplined around everything except food at that time. So I thought, okay, I can do this, but then I'm going to get to the point where I need some tools, and I won't have those tools. I'll just have this altered physiology. And that's when I stopped. And I said, I didn't even schedule an appointment.
Yeah. I wish more people would, look into it as deeply as you did before, cutting out their organs, which you can't get them back.
Yes, I do. I am missing a gallbladder, but that was related to processed food addiction as well. That was,
yeah.
But that was something that unfortunately had to come out. And also very glad that I follow the SOFA's-free lifestyle now, because nothing to process that oil anymore.
So at what point in your journey did you first hear about a plant-based diet and become plant-based?
Actually, that was in 2012. At that point, I had lost about 200 pounds naturally with the help of a dietitian. I had now, years prior to that, I had worked with a dietitian and a doctor, and I was taking diet pills. So they had talked to me then about plant-based diet, and I was like, nope, I'm losing weight. I'm good. I'm feeling fine. Well, I had, since that point, many years down the road now in 2012, I kind of thought, let me just find out more about this plant-based diet. I read the China study. I watched Forks Over Knives when it came out, and I converted immediately. Because, when I had a lot of these other issues before I'd lost the weight, one of them was a discussion about my heart and the valve function of my heart. And they were concerned that the diet pills from years before had affected my heart. And when I saw the research and Dr. Esselstyn's, research on cardiovascular health as a result of this diet, I thought, you know what, in case there is something in there, I'm just going to go this route. Unfortunately, at that time, I did eat a ton of whole foods, but I wasn't all whole food, plant-based. And so I was about 2.5 years on the vegan lifestyle then, and I did fine overall. But I noticed that my energy wasn't great. I was having some hair and skin issues, and it was because I was eating a lot of this vegan replacement meats, and not focusing on nutrient density and focusing on that balance that I focus on now.
When you first started your weight loss journey in, I believe you said it was your 30s, whatever plan was given to you by the dietitian that you were working with, was it free of processed foods? Like, had she or you known back then about processed food addiction?
That's a really, really valid question. And that's a huge part of the journey. So no, she was, we were focused, of course, on weight and health overall. But she was brought up and had her career in the ADA paradigm. So she was all about moderation and all about, the process, incorporating the processed foods, and don't cut anything out, and you can have all these things. And, as I lost weight, she's like, okay, go ahead and have that slice of pizza, have that piece of cake at your birthday party, this is living. This is what life looks like. It's too extreme to go the other way. And it made sense to me. For a long time, I tried to moderate. And then I got to the point where I was, sitting around the 200-pound mark and always hovering around the 200-pound mark. And I could not budge. And I had the food monkey on my back a lot, all the time. And I would moderate those foods she told me I could have. You're being too strict, Jamie, have those foods. And I would just be consumed with thoughts about when I could have them again. And I realized at that point, this was 2017. And I thought, I had tried to moderate these foods for 5 years and I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, well, two peas in a pod. It drives me crazy when well-meaning healthcare professionals, particularly dietitians, teach that paradigm that all things in moderation, really, like cocaine in moderation. They do not understand addiction if they feel that people that have it can moderate it. That's the whole idea of it. Because if somebody could have moderated it, they probably would have already.
Yes. And yeah. And, she's a truly lovely human, and I love her dearly, but that I knew I had to sort of break up with her, right? I had to say, I love you as a human, but I can't work with you as a dietitian anymore. It's taking me down this path of food obsession. And I didn't even know I had it, because I had food obsession my whole life. So it was all for me, it was all part of the way my brain was wired. So the idea then, when I didn't eat those foods and the obsession would go away, I thought, I have all this space in my brain for all these other things now. It was just a huge light bulb went off.
Yeah, I really have not met anybody that truly follows an unprocessed SOS-free diet that struggles. It's always when they dip back into, the restaurant food, the processed food, when you get rid of it and ate like our ancestors ate throughout most of human history, whether or not that even includes small amounts of animal products other than dairy, people don't have the obsession, the cravings, the compulsion. And they beat themselves up for something that is a disease that was created by the processed food industry. And the answer is just stop eating processed food.
Yes. Yes.
Even if it's vegan, and people don't realize, all the fake meats, all the fake cheeses, it's all processed food. If it comes in a can, a box, a bottle, or a bag, with very few exceptions, beans, tomatoes, you're not supposed to be eating it. I mean, you can, but if you're struggling with your weight or food addiction, I don't know how you're going to recover.
Yes. And the marketing ploys these companies use, and I don't, even the companies that are altruistic and they're, they have this beautiful story, and some of them have Bible verses on their products, and you think, whoa, this must be good for me. And it's just, if I have the obsession back, that I'm thinking about that food minutes, hours, days after eating it, that tells me there's something in there that I don't need to be eating.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you familiar with the concept of calorie density?
Definitely. I live by
Yeah.
it.
So talk about that, because there was some questions here already, like, well, does she weigh and measure her food, and does she ever overeat on whole foods? So I heard you talking about that in Dr. Marvis's interview, and I love that you said, I don't wait, because that's the one thing. It's like, it drives me crazy in the food addiction world, because not all of them, but many of them are really truly anti-vegan. And I've had many of them say,
Yes.
you can't recover from food addiction unless you eat animal products. And because your brain needs those neurotransmitters, and you have to weigh and measure your food. You're a shining example. I am. So many other people
Yes.
that, no, you don't have to. I mean, if you want to do it, you can, but it's not like a deal breaker.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. And for me, weighing and measuring my food was a deal breaker. And the reason why is because it sort of triggered this sort of food scarcity thing in me, where I was afraid that I wasn't enough food, or that I had this story in my head that I couldn't have more. If I wanted more food that I had measured or weighed, that meant there was something wrong with me. And little did I know that all it meant was I had moved more that day. I had eaten less the meal before. I had moved more the day before. Who knows? But I had a story in my head that it was, if I needed more than I weighed and measured, then that I was broken. And that, when you carry that with you,
I think it
you
makes
don't
people,
feel
I think it makes people nuts. And I think that
absolutely.
itself creates eating disorders. I cannot tell you how many people have to
Yeah.
see people like Dr. Lyle or Dr. Hawk or Justina Felice, because they're caught in that mindset. And actually, it seems to backfire after a while.
Yeah, and it did for me, for sure. And so when I found calorie density through your work, Chef AJ, I mean, clearly, I remember where I was when I watched the calorie density, your talks on calorie density, and oh my goodness, Jeff from Dr. McDougall's group, his talk on calorie density from years ago. I remember it was 2017. I remember standing there watching because it caught my attention, and I was now I focused on the way that I eat, is making sure that most of my structure of my meals comes from those vegetables or raw veggies first, and then I kind of proceed to the denser foods as I progress through the meal. And sure enough, it works every time. It just takes care
It
of
really, and actually, Dr. Goldhammer says it's never not worked. And I do the same thing. Dr. Goldhammer calls it sequencing. And it not only just works for weight loss and food addiction, but actually for health, because it's very hard to eat, delicious air fried sweet potatoes and then, well, I'll have a salad now. No, you always want to have the higher caloric density foods, because they produce more dopamine. And it's the only time that you really can enjoy those low caloric dense foods is when you're truly hungry. And that's why I start every meal with salad, with steamed vegetables, raw vegetables, but your lower calorie density food, then you'll really enjoy it.
Yes, yes. And I do. And I'll say one of the things about calorie density for me, and I don't know if your experience was with this, but when I eat according to calorie density, it is infinitely easier to listen to my body's cues. I know exactly when I'm full. I don't get tempted, to answer that question. I don't get tempted to overeat, because I know that the way I eat naturally supports my health goals and my weight goals. So I really just stick to, where my appetite tells me. And when I stop when I'm full, and I just kind of move on. I move on with my day. And I know that if I'm hungry a couple hours after a meal, it was probably because I might have had, too much of those high fiber veggies, and maybe I needed a little bit more starch, or, a little bit, more of the legumes. And so it's balance, but I don't have cravings, and I don't have those urges to overeat just because it tastes so good.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I never understood, and none of the people in the food addiction non-vegan space could ever really answer for me, is that they have these strict weighing and measuring policies of like 7 ounces of vegetables, but they give the same plan to somebody, whether she's a 4'10" woman or a 6'2" guy. And that is like, to me, that's just bizarre, because people have different caloric needs based on all kinds of things: their age, their height, their weight, their metabolism. How can
activity
it
level
be one size fits all with weighing and measuring? I mean, again, like you say, that just implies you're broken, and you're not broken. It's the food system that's broken.
Mm-hmm. And I remember even coming into Dr. Iflin's, food addiction recovery world. I remember, seeing photos of some of the members, and they would post their pictures of their meals, and I remember thinking that's like a snack. But then I had to look at the members who were posting those photos. These members were 20, 30 years older than most of the members there. They were very sedentary for their jobs, and they did not have an active exercise life. And I thought, okay, well, so then what I started to do in the group was say, it's not a one size fits all, and no one was suggesting it was, but you know how that goes. People see a photo and they think I should be doing that. And so it was really important for us in the community to say that to the members, like, you need to look at what's right for you and listen to your body, because, we've got an active, many new moms and moms of young kids in the group, active, and they're going to have more food needs. And I'm very active. So I don't have young children, but I'm very active. So it's very important to me to meet my food needs so that I can just put it away. I can put that addictive voice away.
Yeah, well, thank you for acknowledging that. And that's why I hate to do these what I eat in a day videos, because what AJ eats in a day is not necessarily what you're going to eat in a day. You may not like it. You're not like you say, I spin for an hour a day. How can that even help somebody? So I appreciate you saying that. So when you started your ultimate weight loss journey, your final weight loss journey, was it a straight line to success, or were there some slips and slides along the way?
I love that question. So for the most part, really, I don't want to say a straight line, but it was an upward trajectory the whole way, or I guess a downward trajectory the whole way. And, it took me about 4 years to lose the weight. And I consistently kept, the bulk of that 250 pounds, lost about 200 over 4 years. And then I really, sustained and maintained and sort of tried to moderate the processed foods for about 5-6 years. And then once I realized that was just, not possible anymore, the rest of the weight came off effortlessly once I went whole food plant-based and learned the secrets of calorie density and began eating that way. So yes, but I will say, when I talk to people about the downward trajectory, or whatever you want, the line that I graph, my line will look like overall going down, but you'll see it kind of little jumps, little peaks, little valleys all the way. And a lot of that was not only me trying to moderate processed foods, for sure. That would cause a little, 5 pounds up, 5 pounds down, 5 pounds up, 5 pounds down, and was also, some mindset and some exercise lessons that I had to learn along the way about not only how to moderate exercise and how to use it as a tool to feel good and to kind of keep my head in the game, so to speak. It's not about weight loss. And once I found the balance there, that was very helpful. Unfortunately, I had a period of time about 6 years into my journey where I thought, okay, I'm just going to lose as much as I can and compete in fitness competitions. And I got really extreme with the exercise, sort of trying to prove to myself that I could do it. And I think I was trying to prove to the world that I could do something that I had never been rewarded for doing before. And I think, I went down a path that was not a healthy path, unfortunately.
Nice. What role did exercise play in your life during your weight loss journey, and what role does it play now?
During my weight loss journey, I found exercise. I was never an athlete. I have very, very poor hand-eye coordination. It just wasn't my thing growing up. Gym class was probably my least favorite activity at school. But as I, began to lose the weight and move my body, I wanted to move more. So as I had this sort of smaller body, even at 300 pounds, even at 250, I still wanted to move. And so then I got bit by the fitness bug, and I really, kind of found my way into lots of different areas of the fitness world. That unfortunately, getting involved with the fitness shows that really led me down a path with food that was a kind of all or nothing, and the exercise was used sort of in more extreme ways. That was about a year of my life. That was a good lesson. But overall, fitness is a huge part of my journey, but it has shifted. Again, it's not about weight loss. It's not about weight maintenance even. My fitness routine now, if it's the Peloton bike, if it's walks outside, if it's a swim in the pool, if it's yoga, it is about where is my head, right? And what do I need in that time of the day, of the morning or the evening, where it's all about getting my head in the right space and knowing that I've accomplished something towards my overall health and longevity. It's not about the weight.
Thank you. Do you feel that in general, but also in your case specifically, that food addiction can be overcome or just managed?
Oh, I would say overcome with a caveat. Overcome when you understand the science of the food addiction world, when you understand the science of the disease or the condition, when you understand the critical nature of managing cues in your home environment, cues in the world that you're in at large, when you understand the way the food is manufactured and marketed, when you understand, it can be overcome.
Nice. Terrific. Do you keep a clean environment?
That's a good question. Yeah, I do. And I say it's a good question because for many years of my recovery journey, I was single and on my own. And I kept a very clean environment. It's fastidious. My family, big Italian family, we would do, Sunday dinners at my house often, or birthday parties or whatever it was. I would invite everyone over, cook a clean meal. And the joke in the family was, if you want anything, with sugar in it, you got to bring it. Like, she's not going to offer that, have that at her house. But so I kept a very clean environment. And then I reconnected with my now husband, and we dated, and I was very clear about the environment I kept and why I kept it, what my history was. And he was super understanding and supportive. And when I agreed to move from New Jersey to Houston last year, I moved into his home that he shares with his family, and they didn't keep a clean environment. So part of me coming down here was making sure that I was very vocal about my environmental needs in the home. And I actually used something I learned on your show, Chef AJ, about explaining to them that if you're asking me to live in a home with processed foods, it's like asking a recovering alcoholic to live in a bar. So we need to find a way that these foods can be out of sight, out of the environment. And we were able to do that. We were able to do that. And they've been extremely gracious in helping me, not live in a bar.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you spoke up for yourself, because so many of the women that I've worked with, they're agreeable, and they just, not only don't they insist on a clean environment, they don't even ask for it.
Yeah, that was non-negotiable for me.
Well, good for you. Yeah, I love that. So this question from Jordan, who's watching live, is a question we get for every guest, but it's particularly important, I think, in your case, having had such a massive weight loss and weight maintenance success story. What does a typical day of yours look like with both food and movement?
Sure. So typical day. So for me, it's food, movement, and spirit or soul, right? So I do a lot of work, and, my thought life can take me back down the sedentary path, or the processed food path, if I let it, right? And so I make sure that my day starts with some sort of mind or journaling work. And then if I can't do it in the morning, I make sure to do it later in the day. And then I move first thing in the morning. I notice I wake up with a lot of nervous energy and a lot of meat. So I'm sure it's a cortisol spike first thing in the morning. And so I like to work out or move. It might be a walk outside, some time on the Peloton, I'll do strength training as well, and some stretching and foam rolling. And then breakfast is, a lot of, it's actually vegetables. So vegetables, brown rice, some chickpeas. And if I have a smoothie, I will have a smoothie, and it's packed with greens. And fruit only to sweeten those greens, and some lemon juice to cut the bitterness. And this whole sort of breakfast design was designed with Dr. Marvis, and she and I looked at all of my blood markers, all of my lifestyle habits, all of my, what kind of maybe revs me up a little too much when I eat it, fruit wise. And she helped me pick, that recipe that worked best for me. And then we, for lunch, I will actually, if I have leftover breakfast, I'll have that for lunch, because I listen to my body, and many times I make breakfast with my eyes, but my stomach doesn't need that much. So I listen to my body when I'm full, and I finish, for lunch, I finish what I had for breakfast. And then dinner, we have, either some of your recipes. I love your lentil stew. And I also, we really like making, different kinds of vegetables and sauces that we'll make, or some of the plant-based cheese sauces. I've helped convert my husband, who's a cheese sauce lover, to the plant-based cheese sauce world. And we'll do that with tofu scramble, or, a bean and vegetable dish with some of the cheese sauce. For me, I find that it's easier to, when I eat potatoes, for me that my weight sort of stays the same. And I limit potatoes overall for me, given my metabolism, given my history. But I love rice and quinoa and millet and grains and everything in between there. And for some reason, orange sweet potatoes, I can take them or leave them. So I keep those in overall, with dinner here and there.
Nice. But you don't really, other than foods that are problematic with you, you don't really like limit categories of foods other than animal products and processed food, it sounds like.
Not at all. Yep. Not at all. And I have my YouTube channel, I have this video called "My Favorite Vegetable Was Popcorn," because when I was a kid, that was my answer. And I thought I had this wide variety of foods available to me, but of course they were all processed foods. And folks that are on the outside looking in now say to me all the time, "Well, your food choices must be so limited." But the joke is, my foods before were all yellow, brown, white, and the red, of course, was only from ketchup. And now I look at my foods, and I literally have all the colors of the rainbow every meal, every day. And the world of food is wide open to me.
Yeah. And so you're not afraid of fruit. You're not afraid of starch, all those evil categories that, not evil in air quotes, of course.
Yeah. Nope. No, not afraid of. And I had moments, right, in my journey of recovery. I had moments where I believed the hype, and I was trying to moderate things, and I was having animal products that kind of limited me as far as what I could do, calorie density wise. And once I understood the science behind it all, and I got rid of all that, yes, everything opened up and just became so much easier.
Has anyone in your family joined you in following a plant-based diet?
Actually, my husband has converted. He was standard American diet, much like your husband. He has problem keeping on weight. He has the opposite issue. His metabolism is very, very active. So when I explained to him my needs, and I said, "This is how I cook," and we're together, because we dated long distance for about a year, Houston to Jersey, and we would visit each other. And I said, when we're together, like, I'm going to cook these meals, and I'm going to make this, we're going to make these things together, eat together, but it's going to be this food. And he said, I can benefit from better health. Sure, I'll do it. So he just jumped in, and he's now, I would say, 80 to 90% plant-based. And yeah, but no, other members of the family, they're still moderating and standard American diet overall.
And I'm guessing if your husband eats anything that's not on your food plan, he probably doesn't eat it in the house or in front of you, or.
No, and he's so considerate. And we actually live with his father, who's almost 80, and his father went from just eating whatever and whenever he wanted, wherever he wanted in the house. He actually now pulls that food into the back part of the house, where he knows I can't see it. He is so kind and considerate with how he knows that food is very triggering, and he doesn't eat in front of me.
That's really wonderful. That's fantastic. So you talked a little bit about Dr. Marbas. Is she your personal physician? That's fantastic.
And I'm going to work with someone else in plant-based telehealth.
Oh, that's great. Terrific. Has anyone noticed your success? I mean, they must have, right?
You mean in the plant-based telehealth world, or?
Well, just in general. I mean, I'm sure there were people that knew you when you were 250 pounds heavier. And what do they have to say about your
They noticed my success. They're very, very positive and very kind and loving and supportive. They say that I inspire them to get back in control of their health as well. And I'm always grateful to hear that they're inspired. And really, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here with you today, is to help people see that it is possible, that extreme measures are not required. They're not the only route. And really help them see what's possible, that they can overcome it, and remove, and while they're overcoming health and weight issues, remove the shame, and remove the judgment, and remove the story they have in their head about not being able to conduct themselves around certain foods. It's not their fault. It's not their fault. And so, yeah, when people do give me feedback, in my family or out, at work or in the world, it's always very positive and supportive. And the folks that aren't, if they say things or say, you're not really going to eat this for the rest of your life, are you? You're not really going to avoid cake the rest of your life, are you? I just know that comes from a place, they're probably projecting. That's something in them that's maybe judging themselves. And I kind of just let it go.
Yeah. Dave says 250 pounds is remarkable. That is, but keeping it off, that's even more so. So how do you ever have to deal with food pushers or food bullies? But Jamie, it's Thanksgiving. I made it just for you.
Yes, all the time. And more, I lived for about 5-6 years. I lived in New Jersey, where I grew up, and I saw family all the time. So family and friends and other, extended acquaintances, it was a lot of food pushing happening. There's a lot of food pushing happening before that, when I was, losing the weight. There was a lot of food pushing around me in family settings. So yeah, and I remember about 2011, I didn't really have a voice. I had lost a bunch of weight, and I wanted to keep it off, and I wanted to keep going, but I didn't have a voice, right? That I'm not worthy of speaking up, and speaking up for my needs was really, really deeply ingrained in me. And so I had a hard time speaking up, for saying no and saying thank you, thank you, or ordering at a restaurant the way I needed to order. And so that was a lesson where I realized that I'm abandoning myself. Like, I had this fear of abandonment, right, from childhood. And as an adult, I thought, I am it. Like, if I abandon myself, my health, my needs, my preferences, no one's going to come fighting for me. I need to stand up for myself. And once I got that lesson, it became a lot easier to stop abandoning myself, speak up for my needs kindly, lovingly, and firmly.
Great. Thank you. I saw a really good question by our resident question asker, Susanna. Does Jamie ever have cravings or temptations to go off plan? Or are all those cravings extinguished for her after eating this way for the length of time?
That's an awesome question. Cravings, for me, and the way I understand science of cravings, I don't have cravings anymore. And that's because the ingredients are out. If I have a craving, the ingredients must have snuck back in somewhere, and I'll be able to trace it back to the meal prior, or the meal maybe 2 prior. And I'll see, I'm like, oh, there was an ingredient in there. It was a restaurant meal, and the ingredient must have not been as clean as I thought, or it must have gotten in. Doesn't happen often, but when it happens, I can trace it back. But I do, look at overall how the, like that release of all of that food baggage that I was carrying, because I look at it as freedom now. I look at it as, I have freedom from all of the food monkey that I was carrying around. And if I have a nostalgic food moment, which just happened last night, as a matter of fact, it was a beautiful summer night here. My husband and I had just gotten back from we were running errands, and I was getting out of the car, and the weather sort of hit me in the face, and it reminded me of being a kid and having ice cream on a summer night. And I had a nostalgic thought, like, oh, like, wouldn't it be, I can go make some, go inside and make some nice cream and have my, my nostalgic craving met. And then I thought, nice cream is cool. I'm good. I know I can eat it and enjoy it and move on, but it wasn't something that I felt the need to do. So I just let it go and realized it was nostalgia.
Right. Because when you give in to cravings, you actually don't extinguish them. You intensify them.
Exactly.
And speaking of cravings, there is one from Kara question. what do you do when you have sweet cravings? I'm guessing maybe you don't have them. I always find when people have sweet cravings, they're just not eating enough starch and they're not eating enough greens.
Yeah, I don't really have them. I don't, and if I do, it's, I'll have my fruit after my meal. At the end of my meal, I'll have a piece of fruit, and it really extinguishes it. I'm constantly amazed at that. Like I will look at people, if I'm out in the world looking at people eating something that's sweet or processed and sweet, I will think, okay, I know what that tastes like, and I know how that makes me feel. So I don't want it. So I'm just going to have this, whatever snack I brought, if I have a snack that I bring with me, or fruit when I have that at the meal, and every time it goes away.
Yeah. Nice. There's a comment from a live viewer, 250 pounds. You've lost over 2 Mary McDougal's and 2 Chef AJ's, or 1 Mary McDougal and 1 Chef AJ and a Bailey. That's amazing.
That's
Okay.
the other thing too, Chef AJ, is we talk about Bailey. Part of my recovery journey has been getting a dog. Getting a dog has been absolutely transformative, not only from a movement perspective, but in, mindset perspective, and keeping me healthy, keeping him healthy. I've transitioned him to a completely whole food diet as well, and he is thriving on it.
Oh, amazing. That's fantastic. Jordan says, during your journey, did you have any female friends or females in general look down upon you for what you were doing or make fun of you?
Yes, unfortunately. And, all of my friends circles had to change. In some of them in extreme ways where I really just don't have those friends anymore because they were food friends, and in other ways because they were very judgmental or very jealous. I worked with some friends that were all women at in a company when I lived in north of Chicago for many years, and they were very judgmental, very catty, very snide comments, very judgy verbally with me as well. And I remember when I left the company, I remember thinking, they really weren't my friends. They were dealing with their own insecurities. They really weren't my friends.
Yeah, it's hard. People that recover from alcoholism or just for whatever reason quit drinking, they pretty much have to lose that set of friends, because you can't be, I always say you don't go to yesterday's garbage to make tomorrow's dinner.
Exactly. And I realized that, in our culture, and especially women, the way we're programmed to go, towards certain food and towards certain foods and away from others, there's a lot of judgment and condemnation and shame and blame that's happening inside of every woman. And I think that they, instead of maybe cheering each other on, they cut each other down.
Yep. That's unfortunate. When Susanna wants to know, when you were in your weight loss phase, did you have any support groups or online groups that you found helpful? She said she was working privately with a dietitian. So I don't know if did we have support groups back then?
No, not that I found. I'm sure they existed. I just hadn't found them. My support group outside of the dietitian, and I actually found a great support group in person at my local rec center and fitness center. They were just an amazing family of. They had never struggled like I had struggled. They were actually, a lot of them were athletes growing up, and were athletes, and on the weekends, right? And they trained at this gym and fitness center, and they took me in as one of them. And that's where I had my first community. And then I found you and your work and your community. And then I found Dr. Iflin, her work and her community, and that, their work and your Zoomunity, as you've called it. I get a lot of support and a lot of what I need community-wise now from those digital communities and virtual communities.
Nice. There's a question that before you started your ultimate weight loss journey, was your diet really bad? Was it just standard American? Was it pizza and cheesesteaks? Was it just mostly processed food? So what was it before you switched?
I was a major fast food addict, in addition to the processed foods. So it would start, it was constant drive-throughs and drive-through meals and fast food meals, multiple orders, multiple meals that I would order as I would go through the drive-through. And I would eat all of them. So I would eat 2 and 3 meals, and for lunch, right? 2 and 3 value meals would be my lunch. A big box of baked goods would be my breakfast. My dinner, if I cooked it at home, was always processed foods. It was cheesesteaks and hamburgers and pizzas and French fries and chicken fingers and all of the sauces, cheesecakes, and I mean, the richest, most calorie dense foods. Truly, Chef AJ, the fact that I didn't come out with some major medical issue by the time I was in my mid 30s is a shock, given how I was eating.
No. Is that little voice still talking to you?
Yeah, in a good way. Down here.
Yeah.
Down here. The one up here I don't listen to as much, but yeah, the one in my soul, yeah, it does. And it guided me. It guided me here. It guided me to the work that you do and the thought leadership you provide. It guided me to the work of Dr. Iflin and guides me through her community. Right. Her community is not 100% whole food, plant-based. And so I've helped, me and other members have helped carve out a niche within Dr. Iflin's community to make sure that we have a voice.
That is fantastic. And that's what I love about Dr. Iflin and Dr. Tarman, that even though they are not plant-based themselves, they don't say, like some of their colleagues, you have to be eat animal products or you're not going to recover. That's nonsense, because too many people have, Jamie, do you ever worry that you're going to gain any or all of the weight back?
For years I did. And I remember I had people in my life that would tell me, Jamie, that's not who you are anymore. And I didn't believe it, because I was still moderating processed foods, because I was still trying to moderate. And I knew the food monkey was there. And I thought, like I still think I could. And now, once I took out all those foods the last several years ago, I don't ever, because it's so easy and effortless. I just listen to my body. It tells me everything I need. I listen to that still small voice. I ask my body, what do you need right now? We were walking through the grocery store yesterday, and we were walking in the bean aisle, and I was like, oh man, black beans sound so good right now, like for dinner. Oh my gosh. And I realized, that, hormone shifts and other things for females. I thought, oh yeah, I'm having a hormone shift. There you go. I need some iron. And it was just so, my body just tells me loud and clear what it needs and what it doesn't need.
That's amazing. So how do you feel about moderation versus abstinence in general, and specifically where your story?
Moderation, and I don't mean to sound extreme, but it's my own personal belief after trying it for years, moderation kills and abstinence is just freedom.
Yeah, I say abstinence is bliss, because don't knock it till you've tried it. It's just that it's too hard for so many people. They say it is. I mean, Dr. Goldhammer, I don't know if you saw him on the show a few weeks ago, but he kind of put the kibosh on that and answered the person's question about like how hard, why it's hard and how hard it is. And is it really hard? And, that kind of thing.
And I have heard others say, and it might've been Dr. Goldhammer too, that, talks about, well, what's hard is getting your chest cracked open and having, all of your valves, rewired and replaced. And that's hard. That's hard. Not eating a piece of cake is a piece of cake.
Yeah, I agree. I keep looking at you because you're obviously beautiful, but I keep thinking you look like a famous actress and I don't know which one. So I asked the chat, who have people told you?
Oh, have they said anything?
Well, somebody said Joey's girlfriend, Ginger. I don't know which show that is, but I don't, it's not exactly Marissa Tomei. Yeah. Taya Leone. Yes. I love this art. Yes.
I haven't heard that one. That's so funny.
Yeah. She's really pretty. Cause it's been driving me crazy, but I'm just like, what actress do you look like? Angela wants to know if you're familiar with Chuck Carroll's story.
I am familiar with Chuck Carroll's story. And just a side note, I used to have long hair, and people used to say I looked like the actress who played Lorelai Gilmore. So nice. I don't know. I've heard that one a lot. But yes, I'm actually talking to Chuck Carroll about coming on to the Exam Room podcast and actually kind of sharing because his story is so similar. Really, when he talks about that Taco Bell bottom that he talks about when he was trying to, do the cookie diet, went back to the Taco Bell and that sort of, load of bricks emotionally that falls on you after you consume that food. And he realized for the first time what it was doing to him. Like I just lived it. And I have so much in common with him. I'd love to talk to him.
Yeah, he's amazing. And, he did it through gastric bypass. And what I love about your story is you shows that you don't necessarily have to do it that way. And maybe you can save one person from having that operation.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
And Margaret, somebody said that's quite a compliment. I love.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, yes. But Tia Leone, I like that one. We have this little side game going on. Yeah. Jordan says definitely go on his podcast. I would definitely listen. I love your energy. Yeah, this is just amazing. Why do you think that there are people, even healthcare professionals, that just do not believe in this concept of food addiction? And it's really not food addiction. You don't get addicted to food. It's processed, refined food addictions.
Yeah. Working for a healthcare network. It's the largest healthcare network in New Jersey. And I love the work I do because it brings me in front of physicians and nurses all the time. And I actually give grand rounds lectures on processed food addiction. And when I talk to these physicians, that, I constantly hear them say, the patients will never do it. The patients will never stick with it. I would tell my patients what to do. They don't want to do it. They just want a pill. They just want to move on. They want to come in and get their drug and go. And I ask them if, is that really something that's sustainable, not only for the patient, of course, but like for them from a practice perspective. And the answer really lies in the burnout rates. The burnout rates, I'm not even talking about pandemic related burnout rates, but burnout rates of physicians that are just not able to heal their patients. That weighs on you when you have this like deep desire, and you go into the medical field with a deep desire to heal people and to help people find health, and you just hit brick walls everywhere you go. I don't know about you, but it would just take the wind out of my sails in a career that I dreamed about. And I see it happening so many physicians again and again. And I want them to get this message, because abstinence is freedom. And not only is it freedom, but it unlocks the key to outcomes for them, outcomes for healthcare networks, outcomes for patients. Families are improved, lives are lived longer. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. By any chance, have you read the book, The Pleasure Trap?
I have, and I've listened to it as well.
Yeah, that's me, by the way, narrating.
I loved it.
Yeah, no, because doesn't that, I don't know why more people in the food addiction space, even the ones that aren't vegan, don't listen to that book, because to me, that kind of is the story of processed food addiction.
Absolutely. And I also love Dr. Iflin's work and how it complements that. Dr. Iflin talks, her work has really unleashed this whole idea of cues, environmental cues, and how the visual cues and the auditory cues, in our environments can send us back into the food that creates that pleasure trap. So I'm, as safely as I guard my food environment, I also guard my media environment. When I moved into this house that I live in now, I moved in with two raging sports addicts who loved all things sports, with all things commercials for sports and between sports events. And they're all fast food commercials. And I said to them, guys, I can't live in this house with the commercials bombarding me. So we were able to figure out how to sort of cleanse the media environment. And that's been a huge help. Not once I understood cues, it was a missing link for me.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And I love Dr. Iflin's work about that, because I interview her quite a bit. And we actually have a special week coming up in August on Chef AJ Live, where she's going to be a guest. There'll be two guests today. It's called Food Addiction Week. And one of the guests will be a medical professional. And one of them will be a person like you that either is recovering or is struggling with food addiction. But the Q thing is amazing, because it's so funny. When I moved from Los Angeles to the desert in January of 2019, my husband didn't join me right away. And I can barely turn on my iPhone. So we got a TV, but I never could figure out how to use it. And I have not watched TV. And it doesn't mean I don't watch things, guys. Yes, when I spin, I watch a Netflix show. But what I mean is I haven't actually watched regular television for 3.5 years now, which means I have not seen a television commercial in 3.5 years. Because, Netflix doesn't have, Netflix has commercials about the shows, but, not about Pringles and things like that.
And I actually went the opposite. So I spent almost 5-6 years not watching any network TV, not seeing commercials. And then I moved here where it was all network TV and all commercials. And I remember telling my husband, we were here maybe half a day, a full day. And I looked at him and I said, it is so hard here. Why is it so hard to be in this house? And he looked at me like, what? And I said, I don't know what's wrong, but I can't, it's hard here for some reason. And he looked at me, and I looked over at the TV with the constant barrage of commercials, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's the media. And
Wow.
because they had cleaned the food out by then. They had cleaned the food out before I even got down here to live. So yeah, it was the commercials, it was the media cues. And I had to navigate coming back into that world after many years out of that world. And it took some effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Susanna wants to know, do you eat things like nuts, seeds, and avocados?
I eat avocados once a week as part of my veggie sushi. And it's one serving of avocado. So I don't even think it's 2 tablespoons worth in that veggie sushi. And nuts, I have to moderate. For sure, I count them out when I eat them, and I cannot eat them every day. They're here and there. They're raw. I eat them intentionally, but they're maybe 2-3 times a week lately. And I notice when I do eat them more often, not only do I get kind of puffy and I feel like something's off. I also notice that I will look forward a little too much.
Oh, you sound just like me, Jamie. Like I really in 10 years have not eaten any nuts, seeds, and avocado. But once or twice a year when I teach at Rancho La Puerta, if somebody's making my recipes in my class, I'm not going to like pick them out or eat them. But I find that like even this is a couple of pistachios, I'm like, it's the difference between, oh, this is good or this is really good. I find they're a tremendous trigger for me. And that's why I don't eat them regularly or have them in the house. Because you know what I say, if it's in your house.
That's right. It's in your mouth.
Absolutely.
That's
Someone
good.
wants to know if you have ever figured out how to make healthy gnocchi, but the thing is, I'm assuming you don't eat any flour, and
Right.
that's based on flour, unless there's a way to.
No, actually, gnocchi are potato.
So,
So
so there's no flour in gnocchi. Okay.
Well, the recipes that I've seen growing up, and again, this is a long time ago, it was potato and flour, I believe, or maybe rice flour. And I remember grandma pressing all the gnocchi with her back of the fork. And so I have not found a recipe for gnocchi that I use. And here's why. For me, the pasta thing, even if it's potato-based pasta, it's a visual thing. It's a lot of memories. It's very easy for me to want to overeat that, even past fullness. Even if it's whole food and I'm just mashing a potato into a gnocchi form, it's still the whole cue on that plate with the pasta sort of memory and the sauce, and it's going to trigger me. So I will stay away from that. But I know that there are sweet potato gnocchi recipes that I've come across, and there's a bunch of other potato-based.
The hardest thing about gnocchi is pronouncing it, I think. I mean, they spell it Gnocchi. Come on, Oh, you gotta be like an Italian major. Okay, so here, this is a question from a live viewer named Auntie M, and I was going to ask a variation of this question. She says, I'm at 370 pounds. I feel hopeless. I'm so sick from various health conditions. You both are a great inspiration to me. So what do you say to people like Auntie M who maybe have given up hope that they could ever lose weight?
Oh, I first of all, I want to say I'm so glad you asked that. I totally understand how you feel right now. I've been there. I was there for years, and I understand that thought process of I'm never going to come out of this, or how can I ever come out of this? And I would just tell you that it is completely. You have everything you need within you. Our bodies are these amazing machines, and when they connect to our brains, and the blood flow in our brain is moving in the ways that it's supposed to move, our bodies and brains will heal us. But what holds us back are those processed foods. And so getting in a community like you are in here with Chef AJ, getting inspired by folks that are doing it one day at a time, one meal at a time, one bite at a time, every bite gets you closer to freedom. Every single bite. It really is that granular. Every single step I took, every single ride I make on the Peloton or out on my bike, every single extra piece of journaling that I do, of reading that I do, of interviews that I watch, it all gets me closer. So I would say immerse yourself in the community and immerse yourself in the information. Feed that to you the same way, I fed that to myself the same way I fed myself the food. And because nature abhors a vacuum, I replaced my food behaviors with my thought leadership behaviors, and it sunk in, and I programmed myself differently.
Wow. You ever think you'll write a book about your success?
That is the goal. So when I met with Dr. Marvis and worked together, and then she interviewed me, she just looked at me. She's like, "You have got to write a book." She said, "I know I'm not the first person that said that to you." And no, she has not. I've heard it often. And so now I am writing a book. I'm in the process of writing a book. So I've created a online YouTube presence to just sort of start to build the platform. It's in its very, very infancy stage. But yeah, I'm starting to create some content, some thought leadership out there about what long-term recovery from processed food addiction looks like, sounds like every day, because the environments we're all in, at home or out in the world, are just programming us for disease.
Yeah. Do you think the book will be the same name as your YouTube channel, Such a Pretty Face?
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Great. Well, you do have such a pretty face. I mean, and you probably did before too, I'm guessing. I could, that's amazing.
That is the name. And that's the reason, Chef AJ, for the name is not to be self-serving, but when I was growing up with this addiction, so many family or friends would say, you have such a pretty face, Jamie, but really, you really need to do something about that weight. And I remember thinking this was horrible sort of twisted compliment that they give me. And, such a pretty face, it gets you nothing, right? It gets you nothing is kind of what I realized. And what really matters is what's in here and what's in here. And then the rest of it sort of takes care of itself.
Yeah, I love it. So a few of the viewers are asking, do you weigh yourself?
I do not weigh myself. So for me,
or your food,
that's right.
Yay! Finally, someone who's not a scale monkey. Yay! Dr. Lyle would be so proud of you.
Yeah, no, I do not. And Dr. Lyle has been such a big help indirectly through you and others. But yes, I don't weigh myself. Weighing myself, created such a mental dance inside my head. I just stopped doing it several years ago and never turned back. I do have, barometer clothing that I use that I know if for some reason, this was actually a few years ago, I would use these barometer jeans and if they got tight, I would kind of rein things in. But you know what, Chef AJ, I don't need to do that anymore. My weight just manages itself. I don't need to do that anymore. I put this blouse on. I hadn't worn it since last year, and I found like, oh wow, it fits me a lot bigger down here. Okay. It wasn't a big deal.
That is amazing. Well, I feel like we're kindred spirits, so everything you say, I resonate with completely. And, I just hope people will take your story and realize that no matter how long or how deeply they've suffered, there is hope, and that the freedom from the food obsession and compulsion and from the food addiction, it's so much sweeter than any crap that you're eating now that you think you can't live without.
Totally. And I agree completely. And I'll also say to you, when Dr. Marvis, she helped me sort of assess every biomarker. And she also had me look at my metabolism. We measure my metabolism. I wore a glucose monitor, CGM, for a month. And she told me at the end of that process, she looked at all my biomarkers and she said, "You're going to live forever. And your metabolism, Jamie, now your metabolism is on fire. It's on point." And I just looked at her and I go, "Are you serious?" And she said, "Yeah, there's nothing wrong with your metabolism. It is firing. It knows exactly what to do. You are highly insulin sensitive. You are." And it was just so, and I thought, and I asked her, I said, "So I kind of have reversed all these things that I thought I was plagued with and could never get over?" And she said, "Yeah. And you've healed it with food, and you haven't used surgery." And I thought, okay, like it is, I really know now in all ways, it is possible to redesign our entire life and health. And yeah. I want others to know, and I want others to hear this, not to boast, but to share that it is so possible.
Yeah. Anne would like to know, how long have you kept the weight off now?
I started in 2008, so it'll be 15 years next year.
Woohoo! It's been 10 for me. Maybe we can. What do you have not a sobriety date, but like for me, it's January 2nd, 2012. Like that was that was when my real start was, where I literally, was 100% compliant.
It was actually. I look at it as January 31st of 2008. That's when I
Okay, well,
started.
good. We can have like a party like a party every January month. Angela says you are a goddess.
Thank you. That's very sweet.
Yeah, well, I just love your story and love you, and it's just so inspiring, and you're going to help so many people because oh, she went away. Maybe she'll come back.
I'm back. Can you
Oh,
hear
good.
me?
Yeah, your camera was where'd you go? Well, that's a sign that maybe we say goodbye. They're good. Fantastic.
Sorry about
Oh my God. Let's see. She said she's 5'8", Susanna. So yeah. So yeah, Michelle says she just subscribed to your YouTube channel. There is a link in the show notes. So please subscribe. Let's show her some love and get her some subscribers.
Yeah. Can you hear me at all, Steph?
I can hear you. You're fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We had a little flicker with the lightning.
That's okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm sure you're helping so many people in your work with Joan Iflin and just in general with your regular job too.
Thank you. Yes. And thank you again for the opportunity.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you, Jamie, and congratulations. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back in about 90 minutes. We have a bonus show today at 2 p.m. We'll be featuring Sherry Claiborne from the new bundle, and she'll be making lots of recipes.